When I went to my husband's hometown, the one who came to pick me up at the airport was his ex-girlfriend. And to make matters worse, when we tried to get into the car, the doors were locked and wouldn't open. Just then, the car window opened and my husband said something like this.
I never intended to give you a ride from the start. Always complaining about my job. I'm sick and tired of you.
Then the ex-girlfriend in the driver's seat chimed in. Huh? Your wife just keeps complaining. A woman should support her man, right? It's only natural for him to seek affection. Just open the door. We can talk about it then. I tried to open the car door, but it wouldn't budge. My husband said to me in that moment,
You should learn from this and reflect a little. Choose whether to go back or walk.
Seeing my smug husband and his giggling companion, I reached the limits of my patience. What's going on with these people? I can't believe it. There's no point in being married to a man like this anymore. I contained my anger and declared emotionlessly, Got it. Then the car left me behind and drove away. A week later, my husband would face hell. My name is Megan Morris. I'm a 28-year-old part-time housewife. I got a job at a major company in the city and have been working hard ever since. But before I knew it, it had been a few years since I had a boyfriend. Just as I was thinking it might be time to find someone, I was approached at a cafe near my house.
Hey, you dropped this.
At that moment, it was Sebastian, who would later become my husband, who picked up the pouch I dropped. Sebastian continued to approach me with a smile afterward. My first impression of him was that he was a refreshing person. He mentioned that he worked as a freelance designer and frequented this cafe. We exchanged contact information and started going out for meals together. I found myself drawn to Sebastian each time we met. He was good at conversing, and his occasional use of his Springfield accent added a cozy touch. While we were dating, he often spoke about his hometown.
I don't hate my hometown, but my old man who runs a towing service really gives off that classic Springfield vibe, you know? He's stubborn and intimidating. Part of the reason I came to the city was to get away from him.
I see.
Yeah, so from now on, I want us to live happily together in the city.
Those words made me happy. And during our 1-year anniversary dinner, Sebastian proposed to me. I happily accepted the proposal and got engaged. Afterwards, my parents also approved of the marriage, and next it was time to visit Sebastian's family. When we arrived in his hometown, Sebastian's mother came to pick us up at the airport by car. It was another 2-hour drive from the airport to Sebastian's family home. When I nervously greeted my mother-in-law, she laughed boldly and said, "You don't need to be so nervous. Come on, get in, get in." During the car ride, I was able to have a pleasant conversation with my mother-in-law. She gave off a casual vibe with an air of a sturdy, down-to-earth country mother. "Megan, my husband may look scary, but he's a kind-hearted person at heart. And just relax." "Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting him." And so we arrived at Sebastian's family home. As we entered the large house, my father-in-law was waiting in the living room, arms crossed. Indeed, my father-in-law seemed intimidating, enough to be likened to someone with a quiver of arrows. Nervously introducing myself, my father-in-law nodded slowly in response to me. Sebastian introduced me to him.
"Dad, I want to marry Megan, who's here."
Father-in-law opened his mouth.
"Can you protect Megan after running away without taking over the family business?" I'll protect her. I want to be happy with Megan in the city."
My father-in-law shifted his gaze away from Sebastian and turned to me.
"Megan, he's not much of a son, but please take care of him."
"No, father-in-law, please, raise your head. Likewise, I look forward to getting to know you." Then, with a smile, mother-in-law said, "Well then, now that introductions are over, let's all have dinner together." And so I was welcomed by both my parents and my sister, who came later, and we sat around the dining table together. Sebastian's family, his father, was a bit intimidating, but they were kind and good people. I'm glad. With that impression in mind, our first visit to the in-laws' house came to an end. On the way back, Sebastian told me.
That was nerve-wracking. I was really sweating, thinking they'd tell me to bring my bride back to our hometown. Dad seems to like you, Megan. Now it'll be easier for me to go back home. Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome. I'm happy to meet your wonderful family. And so Sebastian and I registered our marriage and had a small wedding. However, we had a slight disagreement when it came to deciding on our new home. At the time, I was living in a spacious apartment, while Sebastian resided in a one-room unit, so it was decided that he would move in with me. However, he suddenly expressed the desire to rent a new place. Sebastian found a newly built apartment, which was indeed beautiful, but the rent was higher than we had anticipated. When I mentioned this to Sebastian, he said,
I often work from home, so having a clean and nice home contributes to my motivation. I'll cover the rent. Please, trust me.
And so, in a compromise, I agreed to sign a lease for a new rental apartment, and we began living together. Sebastian helped out a lot with household chores, and we were living happily. Then, about 3 months after our marriage, Sebastian told me, some friends from my hometown are coming over, so I'd like to invite them to our place. I agreed, and on the day I prepared a special meal, eagerly awaiting their arrival.
Hey, Megan, I brought someone.
As I looked at the person who followed Sebastian, I was surprised. Despite being told it was a friend, I had assumed it was a man, but to my surprise, it was a woman. Nice to meet you, I'm Madison. Facing Madison's cheerful greeting, I hesitated, but still smiled politely, saying, I'm Sebastian's wife. Wife? Huh. Sebastian, you really are married. That's hilarious.
See, I told you. Anyway, Madison, put your stuff here. It's a bit cramped, but squeeze in. Sebastian and Madison seemed quite close. Unable to confront the fact that I hadn't been informed that Sebastian's friend was a woman, I couldn't press the matter and instead returned to preparing the meal. Sebastian and Madison were engrossed in conversations about their past that I knew nothing about. How do you two know each other? Sebastian answered my question. We were classmates from junior high to high school. She's what you'd call a troublemaker. Hey, what's with that description? They began enjoying themselves, nibbling on the meal I had prepared and starting to drink. As they got tipsy and conversed in a local dialect, discussing things unfamiliar to me, I couldn't join in and could only continue to smile politely. I should probably head back to the hotel soon. Madison checked the time and mentioned this. You could stay over, you know? I was taken aback by Sebastian's words. Well, next time I'll have to. As Madison said this, she picked up her belongings and started putting on her shoes. Since Sebastian said he was going to take a bath, I decided to accompany Madison outside the apartment building. Thanks for being good friends with Sebastian. Please, come and visit again. I didn't really think that for a second, but out of courtesy, I said so. Then Madison laughed. You're pretty good at playing along. Huh? Let me tell you, Sebastian and I used to date back in high school. What? Just as I was at a loss for words, a taxi pulled up and Madison got in. Well, see you later, Megan. With that, Madison left. Returning to the room, I immediately confronted Sebastian. So Madison is your ex-girlfriend? What were you thinking, inviting someone like that into our home? Oh, so she told you, huh? But we only dated for a short while and we're still friends. Don't be so upset about it. Seeing Sebastian acting so nonchalant, I couldn't believe it. After some time passed, Sebastian said to me, Hey, so I haven't been able to get much work this month. Could you wait a bit for the rent payment? Huh? I understood that being a freelancer comes with fluctuations in income, but to be told something like this, I was a bit bewildered. Well, that's unavoidable, but please make sure to do it from next month, okay? I understand. Despite having such a conversation, Sebastian still didn't pay the rent the following month. Not only that, he didn't even provide the minimum living expenses. Deciding to address the issues I hadn't brought up before, I said,
Sebastian, can you show me last year's tax return documents?
Huh? What's with that? I don't wanna.
It's an important aspect to consider for our household finances. Show it to me. Reluctantly, he brought the documents. Upon seeing them, I was speechless. Sebastian's income from last year was only about $10,000. What does this mean?
It can't be helped, right? That's just how it is with freelancers.
What about the money you had until now?
Before we got married, I was quietly scraping by working at convenience stores, and I used the savings I had since I was young. But now, even that's run out.
So what are we going to do from now on? When I asked forcefully, Sebastian responded as if it were obvious.
Megan, you work for a big company, so you'll be fine without my contribution, right?
But...
Well, I'll work hard from now on, so for the time being, let's just get along.
After that, without actually paying rent or expenses, he ended up relying on me for everything. I repeatedly suggested to Sebastian that he should try to find a full-time job and start job hunting. Initially, he evaded the topic, but gradually he started to get irritated and even snapped back at me, leaving household chores entirely up to me. He didn't do any housework and didn't contribute financially. Living with Sebastian like that, I accumulated a lot of stress. As time passed, the first end of year since our marriage approached.
Can we go back to my hometown for New Year's?
Upon Sebastian's request, I nodded. Since we were married, I felt it was my obligation to maintain relations with his family. Or so I thought. However, lately, we had been arguing constantly about job-related matters, so our communication had dwindled. On the day we were supposed to visit his parents' home, I expected his mother to pick us up at the airport, but to my surprise, it was Sebastian's ex-girlfriend, Madison, who came to pick us up in her car. Huh? Madison, why?
Why? Obviously I came to pick up Sebastian.
How typical of her to say that. Sebastian silently got into Madison's car without saying a word. I reluctantly tried to get into the car as well, but it was locked. It's locked. I can't get in. As I spoke to them through the window, Sebastian uttered,
I never intended to give you a ride from the start.
Huh?
You're always complaining about my job. I'm sick and tired of you.
At this point, Madison also chimed in.
She's such a whiner, isn't she? Women are supposed to support men, right? It's only natural for Sebastian to seek love, isn't it?
Just open the door. We can talk about it then. I tried to open the car door, but it wouldn't budge. At that, my husband blurted out,
You'd better learn from this and be a little sorry. Go home or walk. Your choice.
Seeing Sebastian's smug expression and Madison's giggles, I reached my limit of patience. What is it with these guys? I can't believe it. There is no point in being married to this man anymore. I contained my anger and calmly stated, I understand. Then the car sped away, leaving me behind. As I watched them disappear from view, I returned to the airport in frustration. I couldn't bear the thought of walking back to my in-laws' house anymore. While waiting for the return flight, I called my in-laws and explained the situation to my mother-in-law. She then informed me that my father-in-law would take over for her. Hello, Dad. I'm sorry I can't come today, but... I talked on the phone with my father-in-law for a while. Later, I returned to the city and immediately signed a lease for a week-to-week apartment. I found a moving company that could move me on the same day and decided to move out right after the new year. On the day of the move, I had my belongings transported to a storage unit and to the weekly apartment. After leaving the divorce papers in the empty room, I left the house I had been living in. This was a week after Sebastian left me behind. When I returned to my weekly apartment, I received a phone call from my husband. I ignored it, but he kept calling persistently. Feeling annoyed, I finally answered the phone and he suddenly shouted,
Hey, Megan, what's going on? When I came home, it was like an empty shell. You even left the divorce papers. Did you leave? What are you thinking?
To the loudly yelling husband, I calmly said I would meet him at a nearby cafe and hung up. A few hours later, when I entered the cafe, Sebastian was already waiting.
Finally, you're here, huh?
His face, upon spotting me, turned an amusing shade of blue.
Why is Dad?
So, I had brought along my father-in-law. I told him what had happened and that I was going to say goodbye to you, and he came all the way from Springfield. I said so and took a seat alongside my father-in-law. Sebastian seemed completely diminished and calmly broached the topic. I left that house of my own accord. I want to divorce you. Then Sebastian, with eyes drifting, declared,
I don't want that. You can't just decide to divorce like that. It's too much.
Too much? And you're saying that? You left me behind and went with your ex-girlfriend.
That's why I'm saying she's just a friend.
At that moment, my father-in-law slammed photos onto the table.
So how do you explain this?
There was a picture of Sebastian entering a local hotel with Madison.
What's this about? Megan asked me to do this. Megan asked me to behave normally while you're visiting and discreetly investigate. These are photos your sister took while tailing you. Any excuses? Huh? Well...
As Sebastian faltered, my father-in-law intervened.
Enough with the excuses. After leaving Megan at the airport, you cheat in our hometown. You're a disgrace as a man. I'm sorry, Dad. You're apologizing to the wrong person.
Then Sebastian turned to me.
Megan, I'm sorry, it was a mistake, but I don't want a divorce. You're the only one I love.
Then my father-in-law yelled at him even more.
Are you still making her cry with that nonsense? It's pathetic to have someone like you as my son. All you can do is sincerely apologize to Megan and agree to the divorce. But...
When Sebastian tried to persist, I firmly told him, You don't contribute to living expenses, you abandon me in your hometown, and on top of that, you cheat on me with a mistress. There's no way I can stay married to someone like that. We are getting divorced. Sign the papers now.
But...
After that, Sebastian signed the divorce papers in front of his father, who then grabbed him by the collar and disappeared somewhere. Later, the divorce between Sebastian and me was finalized. There was no division of assets. Instead, I demanded compensation for his infidelity. However, with his meager savings and income, he couldn't pay, so ultimately his father covered for him. Moreover, his father even paid a substantial amount as compensation for the inconvenience. Sebastian couldn't afford the rent in the city anymore and was brought back to his hometown by his father. I also demanded compensation from Madison, and it seems Sebastian and Madison argued over the matter, resulting in their eventual breakup. I've heard that Sebastian is now living a life where he works at his father's construction company while having the alimony money deducted from his pay. My father-in-law says he'll never let Sebastian go back to the city again. Sebastian, who went from a glamorous city life to doing manual labor in his hometown, reportedly goes to work crying every day. However, even hearing that, I don't sympathize with him at all. I think he should suffer as much as possible. As for me, with the compensation, I moved and started a new life. The stress is gone and work is going well. I will continue to work diligently and strive to be truly happy.